Good afternoon. Thank you for tuning into this brief little video. My name is Ryan Melliker. I'm president and co-founder of Logic Analytics Research and Consulting, where we refer to as LARC for short. I'm going to walk through a full demo of our LARC GIS application today. As we announced recently, we have added a few functionalities to the application that I think will be really helpful. I'll make sure to highlight those as I go through it. But this recording is intended to be a little bit of everything in the application to give you a sense of how unique the data is, how some of the data is derived, and really different ways you can leverage the data to make informed business decisions related to whether it be hotel operations, hotel lending, or hotel investments. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. So as we jump into it, you will see right here, this is our GIS application. And this is kind of the homepage of the application, which has obviously the US map. The GIS application, to give you a sense, is really focused on trying to find hotel locations that are superior to peers in the market to generate outsized returns for investors, stability for lenders, give them confidence in the lending, or find opportunities to generate more attractive operational performance from an operational perspective. So GIS data is basically demographic data. It's been used across other real estate classes for the last, call it 25 years or so, but it never really cracked into the hotel world because local demographic data is just that, it's local. And unfortunately, hotels don't generally cater to locals, right? Aside from the occasional food and beverage outlet, most people that are staying in a hotel are not local. That's why they're staying at a hotel. So that's one of the challenges is why GIS data never really took off outside, in the hotel landscape. But when we launched LARC a few years ago, we embarked on the plan of building out a GIS application that was dedicated to the hotel industry. And that's what you see here. We launched this application now about 2.5 years ago. We've gradually expanded it, increased increased some of the functionality built into it. And I think as we walk through this, you'll be really pleased. But to give you some perspective, we're using local demographic, data to identify where hotel demand generators are really originating. So when you look at the application, what you're looking at here at a national level is economic activity, aka GDP. Where's GDP strongest or weakest? But what's really interesting is, you can look at GDP at a national level, but you can also drill down to the state level, a county, a city, zip code, or even a census block group. What you're looking at here is census block group data. And to give you an idea, and we'll zoom into Las Vegas. I think we're going to play around in Las Vegas a little bit today to give you an idea of how much data there is in this application. Obviously, here is Las Vegas. There are, and I'll go ahead and click the auto adjust button here. So you can see the color coding changes based on that. There are 217,000 census block groups across the United States. So we have data for every one of them. So we're not talking about, your top 50 markets, your top 700 sub-markets or anything like that. This is super granular data. And if you look, this is basically a heat map for last year. So our baseline data is currently 2023. We'll roll forward to 2024 as a baseline in March or so. But this is calendar year data, economic activity. And you can see this block group last year had about $50 million in economic activity, whereas this block group down here was 140 million. Over here, 167. This little guy right here, 20 million. You get the idea. Economic activity is a great indicator for where corporate transient demand is being generated, but it's not the only thing. We also have office employment data, also very helpful for corporate transient demand. We layer in retail sales data, which is super helpful from a leisure perspective. It's one of the factors that we look at when identifying leisure demand growth. We also, from a leisure perspective, we actually track, to give you an idea, 27 categories of tourist visitation, and we aggregate that data up into an index. So we're tracking how many people in 2023 visited, to give you an idea, a given golf course or stadium, arena, theater, museum, hospital, military base, ski area, amusement park, beach, list goes on, right? All 27 categories of tourist attraction. We know how many people visited those hotels, really based on a combination of three core factors. Number one is um, um, ticket sales data. Number two is credit card data. And number three is mobility data. We don't think any one of those data sources alone is sufficient to understand that data. But when you aggregate it up and create an index, it's very powerful. Why do we create an index as opposed to saying, hey, this is how much leisure demand is being generated? Because tonight, Baltimore Ravens are going to host the Cincinnati Bengals. We know that stadium is going to be sold out. There's going to be demand, hotel demand being generated because of that game. People coming in, whether it be the press coming in from out of town, family, friends, you name it. People wanting to see a rivalry game. Who knows? All those things. But we don't know just because there's 60,000 people at that stadium, how many of them actually stayed overnight. We know it wasn't all 60,000 of them, right? So because of that, we create an index and we say, hey, here's an index of here's an index of overall, tourist visitation levels. And that's what you're seeing here, where the tourist visitation is strongest. We also have data like population, which is super helpful from an extended stay perspective. We have meeting space data. Where do we get our meeting space data from? That's a great question. So it comes from two components. Number one is we have every convention center in the country loaded into the application. We're not just talking about things like the Las Vegas Convention Center, but you'll also things like the World Market Center. Here's another one right here. The Western. You zoom out, you'll see more and more of them. We have literally, here's one all the way down here, the Henderson Events Plaza. There's about 500 of them in the application. The other thing that we have in the application is we have every hotel in the country. So not just the convention centers that are separate from hotels, but also the ones that are within the hotel. And I click on that and you see kind of all those numbers. That's because there's that many hotels in that area. I'll zoom into the 11 because it'll be a little easier to see. And as they break down, you'll start to see the hotels. And we've got the data for every one of those hotels to give you, including the meeting space, to give you an idea. And that's where that meeting space data comes from. Now, because we have every hotel in the country loaded into the application, we can look at all of this data, not just in terms of the aggregate demand generator macroeconomic activity down to the block group level, but we can look at it relative to the amount of supply there is in that block group to accommodate that demand, that level of demand. So you can look at economic activity per room, office employment per room, retail sales per room, et cetera. We even have an estimate of RevPAR per room down to the census block group level. Now, to give you an idea, this is an algorithm. Unlike STR or CoStar or Calibri, we do not get data from 40,000 hotels across the country. We're not trying to get data from 40,000 hotels across the country. That's not our business model. We just assume let those other guys do that. They do it really well. Let them do it. What we're doing here is we're building a complex algorithm that's based on a handful of factors. I don't want to get into detail on all those factors. What I will tell you is there are 9,000 actual hotel RevPAR levels built into the application from data that we do get from hotels. We also have our demand breakdown based on all of these macro factors and the amount of inventory to accommodate that demand across every block group. And we can say, hey, this is what RevPAR is in that area. And so to give you an idea, this block group, $80.68 RevPAR last year, whereas up here, 185. Over here, 56.43. You get the idea. RevPAR gets spread out across the market pretty, based on where the demand generators are, where the supply is to accommodate those demand generators. You get the idea. The algorithm has been vetted by dozens of our large institutional clients. They feel very comfortable with it. We're very proud of it. We think this gives you a great sense of where RevPAR is strongest or weakest across the market. And you're not just talking about kind of the border of submarkets, et cetera. You're really down to the census block group level where you can see just how much RevPAR, where RevPAR is strongest or weakest. Now that gives you a great baseline of data that's super helpful to help understand a market and where the demand is being generated, and where RevPAR is strongest or weakest. But what's really helpful is the fact that we have a 5-year forecast built into the application. And on the map, you can certainly map out what things will look like in 5 years, in an aggregate basis or on a per room basis. You can also look at the growth rates, on an aggregate basis or on a per room basis. And to give you an idea, here's where we're going to look at RevPAR growth. I'm going to go ahead and click that auto adjust button. For some reason, those bubbles keep popping up. We'll get rid of those. And now we're saying, hey, this block group's going to have 62% RevPAR growth over the next 5 years, whereas this one over here is more like 9. Up here, 66. Over here, 39.5. You will notice a lot of gray areas. Why is that? Why is there not no information available? If there's no hotels, there's no RevPAR, no RevPAR growth, no metrics per available room because there's no rooms, right? So that's why you might see those gray areas. At the end of the day, focus on the blue. Darker is stronger, lighter is weaker. It tells you where RevPAR growth is going to be strongest across that market over the next 5 years. We also have helpful data related to population change, net migration data related to population over the next 5 years on a percentage basis or an absolute basis. From an extended stay perspective, our clients find that data incredibly helpful. Now, the other thing that I'll do right here is I'm going to go ahead and click in and pull up a hotel. Now, if I zoom in and I pull up a hotel, and let's just pull up a random hotel here. Let's not do the Residence Inn. Let's do right here is Hilton Garden Inn Strip South. If I just click more info, and this is Hilton Garden Inn south of the Strip. When I click more info, you will notice a couple of things. Number one is the map zoomed out, and what was created immediately surrounding the hotel were two trade areas, a 5-minute drive time zone around the hotel or a 15-minute drive time zone around the hotel. Those are our default trade areas. You can change those simply right here by adjusting it. You can do a 5-minute drive time zone out to a 15, out to a 60-minute. You can change it to a walk zone if you're looking at something super urban, 5 minutes out to 60-minute walk zone. You can do a radius, a 1, 3, 5-mile radius. All you do then is click Get Insights, and this panel that opened up on the right is now going to pull data for those specific areas. So in short, what you've done is just created 3 submarkets specific to your asset or your subject, with your subject at the center of it. And I'm going to go ahead and expand this panel, and you'll see what data is available in the panel. Now, when we look at the data in the panel, you're going to be able to see a few different things. Number one is you're going to see RevPAR metrics. So let's focus on the middle here, this 3-mile radius, okay? Here's what RevPAR was within a 3-mile radius of the subject Hilton Garden Inn in 2023. Here's where it's forecasted to be in 2028. Here's our market. The market will always tie out to STR's definition of the market. In this case, it's Las Vegas. What that RevPAR was in 2023, what it's forecasted to be in 2028, and then the nation as a whole. You'll see that leisure demand index, much, much lower in this location versus the market as a whole, because you're south of the Strip, you're not on the Strip. That shouldn't be too surprising. Office employment, low metrics relative to the national average. That shouldn't be surprising in Las Vegas. But this location is a little bit stronger than the market average because you're south of the Strip. On the Strip, there's no offices, right? And then retail sales per room actually has quite a bit of growth. Looks like it's stronger than the market per room. And the growth profile is similar to the national average. And then you have economic activity per room, meeting space per room, all that. And what we then do is aggregate all of this data up into one simple metric that we refer to as the LARC score. The LARC score, plain and simple, is a location quotient. It simply measures the quality of a given hotel's location as it pertains to that hotel's proximity to demand generators relative to the amount of competitive supply in the area. It is an index that goes from 0 to 100, 100 being perfect, 0 being bad, and 50 being the national average. If that sounds familiar, it's because it's very similar to something called a walk score for housing or apartment complexes. The difference is instead of being proximate to drugstores and coffee shops that, residents may want to be proximate to for their amenities, we're focused on hotel demand generators and all the data that you see in this application. And that LARC score of 65, when you look at this graphic, you will notice a couple of things. Number one is the low end and the high end are faded out. Why is that? That's because in Las Vegas, there is no score below 9 and no score above 87. And the average across Las Vegas is not a 50, it's a 67. So this hotel is right around average for the Las Vegas market. Not materially better, not materially worse. So even though it's above the national average of 50, from a market perspective, it's kind of comparable. Then if we toggle over from area insights to place info, you're going to see a breakdown of that LARC score into 3 subscores, as well as detail about the property, where you'll see the number of rooms and meeting space, right? And that property, leisure is a 66, corporate transient is a 66, and group is a 60. So this is kind of all three demand segments are kind of in that, 60 to 70 range. Depending on the hotel, you can see things really skew one way or another across a given market. And it gives you a great insight into which demand segments the hotel should be attracting based on its location. If you're looking at developing a hotel for a specific location, what types of brands do you want to focus on? Because if you're going to be a 90 in leisure and a 15 in corporate transient, you don't want a brand that's catering to corporate transient, right? Those types of dynamics are really, really helpful. Then the other thing I'll tell you is just below that RevPAR chart, you'll see this little button that says annual projections with that little download icon. You can actually download into Excel annual RevPAR forecasts for this specific area. You actually download it for all 3 of these areas. So you're going to see not just what the 5-year outlook was for RevPAR growth, but you'll see what 2025, 2026, 27, 28 are all going to look like from a RevPAR growth perspective. How do we get these forecasts? It's a great question. And there's your actual forecast where you can see, 1 mile, 3 mile, 5 mile radius versus the market. And if I go ahead and expand all of those, you'll see 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. How do we get those forecasts? This is a really, really good question. So at the end of the day, we build out at LARC, our core business is doing market forecasting work. We issue quarterly forecasts for 62 cities across the U.S. Those forecasts include supply, demand, occupancy, ADR, RevPAR, and in the major markets, it also include things like wages, property taxes, hotel EBITDA, cap rates, and asset values, all looking out 5 years. We build out models specific to each market, identifying the macro factors that have historically driven hotel performance across that market, and based on the forecasts that we have for those factors going forward, build out forecasts for each market. So each market is specific to that market. We then take that market forecast that you see right here, and we go ahead and we allocate that growth across the entire market based on where the macroeconomic factors in this application, that economic growth, retail sales, office employment, meeting space, supply, population, all that data, where is it strongest and where is it weakest? And we go ahead and create an index of the macro factor growth relative to the market growth and apply that index to the RevPAR growth forecast that we have right there. And that tells you how the different areas are going to perform. And overall, you can see if we focus on that 3 mile radius again, you've got really strong growth in 3 mile radius of this hotel this year and the years that follow, stronger than the market average, which is already relatively strong. This is an attractive location from a growth perspective. And that is entirely being driven by the data in the application. There is nothing subjective to this at all. We are taking a one-size-fits-all approach within the market to build out a forecast for that market. And if you happen to be looking at an asset outside of the 62 markets that we issue quarterly forecasts for, we still have forecasts for that in the application for those, instead of benchmarking the local macroeconomic growth indicators to the market level growth indicators. We just benchmark it to the national indicators and then apply that ratio, that index, to our national forecast. So that gives you a sense of what that looks like. You have all of that data there. Now, if we go back to the application and that main map, a couple of the things that I want to show you is you can then go ahead and add this hotel to a comparison list. And you can add a bunch of other comparison properties. And I went through and I selected a handful of hotels. You just click more info. You can go ahead and add them, right? Add to the comparison list. You can also save to My Places. If you save it to My Places, it's going to show up right here. There's the South Point Hotel, right? So, but within the comparison list, you can do two different things. The one thing that's super cool is you can download the data. When you download the data, what I mean by download the data is, I mean download the data. And you're going to see this comparison list report get pulled up. And this is an Excel file that's going to have all of the data tied to that 1 mile, 3 mile, and 5 mile radius, totally extractable from the application to put into your financial models, however you see fit, for all the block groups that fall within those areas. So to give you an idea, here's our hotels: the Hilton Garden Inn, the Baymont, the True, the La Quinta, the Hampton Inn, and the Spring Hill. And you'll see all the LARC scores tied to each of those properties, as well as, to give you an idea, within a 1 mile radius, you're not going to see what was last year's RevPAR, and what's the forecasted RevPAR in 5 years, how within that 1 mile radius, how does that stack up to aggregate economic activity per room last year, forecasted aggregate economic activity in 5 years, and then per room, same thing for retail sales, leisure demand index, office employment, meeting space, meeting space, room count, population, all of that. And then you do the same thing for the 3 miles and the same thing for the 5 miles. So all of that data is fully available. Now, the other thing that you can do here is you can go to Compare Insights. And here's one of the new features that we have in the application. Within the Compare Insights, you've got all the hotels, and you can select whichever ones you want to see side by side in the application. But you also have this super cool new feature that we call Download a Location Intelligence Report. We got a lot of feedback from our clients that sometimes they just need us to tell them what's most important. As opposed, there's so much data in this application, it can be a little overwhelming. So here you can go through and you select your subject property, and then you can go in and select your competitive set, just like we just did. And then you can download a location intelligence report. You just click that and it'll download. I actually just downloaded one to make life easy. And if I go ahead and open that location, that one that I just downloaded, here it is, the Hilton Garden Inn South. Let me go ahead and view this in full screen mode. I think it'll be a little bit easier for everybody to see. This is what the location intelligence reports look like. So we've got the subject property we've identified right here. Within a 5-minute drive time zone, here's what RevPAR was in 2023 versus 2028 versus the market. Again, STR's market definition, which in this case would be Las Vegas, and the nation. You'll then see that annual growth projection that we just walked through before. Here we're looking at a 5-minute and 15-minute drive time zone. Again, you can download it for the 1, 3, 5 mile radii, any trade area around a hotel you're looking for within the application. We'll then give you a breakdown of the LARC scores like you see right here. And then the other feature here is you're going to see a competitive set analysis. Why did we put the competitive set in there? Because you can literally see how the hotel stacks up to the competitors for all the different LARC scores, the leisure, the corporate, the group, and the total. And then you'll see a LARC score index. Why is that LARC score index important? Well, if your hotel's running at a 90% index on the corporate transient front relative to your comp set, you may be sitting there saying, well, geez, we should be putting more effort in getting more corporate transient demand. Reality is your location is an 89.2. You're probably getting your fair share. On the flip side, if you're only getting 75% of your leisure index, 70% leisure share from data like TravelClick, it's super helpful to know that, hey, our location is stronger. We can't blame location. Is this brand? Is it the asset is tired, or is it something else? But we should be able to do better than that. And then the same thing from group and overall LARC score. We think the overall LARC score index is super helpful when you're comparing to an STR, star report, right? If in your star report your hotel is running 110% RevPAR index, and you pull up this report and you say, hey, we have a 95.6% LARC score index, you are over penetrating, right? That's great. You're doing really, really well. Maybe that's because your operator is amazing. Maybe that's because the hotel is in great shape and it is superior to the peer group. Maybe it's that you just simply have a better brand. All those things can kind of a factor. But what it also tells you is that, that plan from the brand to put together a $15 million PIP might not make a lot of sense because you're already running 15% above your peer group or above your location index. So are you really going to get more lift beyond that? Or are you going to price yourself out as you try to push rate? You may not be able to. So it gives you some insight into that. And maybe we don't want to spend that money, and it gives you a chance to, hey, here's why we don't. We want to push back. On the flip side, maybe you're running an 80% RevPAR penetration index, and you've got a 95% LARC score index, and you're saying, hey, we're leaving money on the table. Why aren't we doing better? And it gives us a sense to, as an operator, it tells you to, figure out what's going on. Maybe it is capital related, maybe it's brand related, maybe it's the operations aren't doing as well. As an owner, it gives you room to push the operator and ask those questions, or maybe decide to put capital into the asset to get the lift. But it will help you quantify what that lift will be based on where your RevPAR index is relative to that location score index. So that's some of the data that's available in the application. Obviously, then you see all the charts that I showed you before. And then you'll see a map. The map will here identify the 5-minute and 15-minute drive time zones that are mentioned throughout this report, as well as the hotels under construction in the application. You'll see several hotels that are scheduled to open, including the M Resort, the Delta, and the Dream Las Vegas. Hotels under construction are in the application. Yes, I didn't mention that before. So if we close back out here and we go ahead and open the LARC layers, up until now, all we've seen is the hotel and the convention center LARC layers. But the reality is, if we have data that incorporates forecasts on a per room basis going forward, that means we have to have a forecast not just for the macro factors that drive performance, but also the room count change. So we have every hotel under construction in the application as well. Ranging from the Suncoast Hotel to the Homewood Suites at the Speedway. Out here, you're looking at the Atwell Henderson, you name it. Updated quarterly. We've got every hotel under construction in the U.S. Not every hotel in the pipeline, but every hotel under construction in the U.S. We also, super cool, within the application, have vehicular traffic data. You want to see where traffic is strongest or weakest? Just zoom in. Darker is stronger, lighter is weaker. 31,000 vehicles traveled, this area on daily basis 2019, 11,300 there. You also have a couple other things in the application I don't want to spend too much time on, but you can see flood zones. You can see sea level changes. Obviously, where Vegas, sea level is not relevant, but that's very helpful coastal. You can look at data on a satellite image if you prefer, as opposed to the mapping. And then the other thing that I want to highlight here that's a new feature to the application is we also have transacted hotels. So hotel trades. Now, we only include single asset transactions, but you can see there's obviously plenty of them. As we zoom in, you'll see them. And if I go ahead and click this hotel, you'll see right when you click on it, it says estimated sale price was $20 million. And then you can get more detail. By clicking on it, it'll take a second. All of the data will populate for that location. We'll scroll down to click here for more information. And, and when I click for more information, you're going to see some detail. $20 million was $133,000 a key. It transacted in Q3 2023. And then here's the buyer. You can expand it and get a little, and you can see that a little more clearly, but it gives you all that detail. And I think that is very, very helpful, to the client. Where you can actually see across the area what hotels have transacted, so you have a sense of values across the area. Other things that I'll highlight real quickly within the application that I think are important valuable to our clients. First thing is, up until now, all we've done is operate within the map and really just pulling data specific to things in the map. You can type in addresses too. So to give you an idea, our hotel here that we just selected, the Hilton Garden Inn, Hilton Garden Inn South, 7830 South Las Vegas Boulevard. So if I go into the search area and I type in Hilton Garden Inn South Las Vegas, of course I spelled it wrong, but it's not coming up. You're not finding it, right? Because it's not Graydon, bad spelling. It's not coming up because we're not finding it for one reason or another. That's not the name that is in our system. The reality is our system is not going to have the same naming function as every other system leveraged across the industry. But the good news is, if we go back to that, just type in the address, 7830 South Las Vegas Boulevard. 7830 South Las. I'll stop there. And look at that. The very first hotel is the Hilton Garden Inn Las Vegas Strip. And then you can go ahead and pull it up that way. The other thing you can do is go toggle over from hotel to location. Now, when you search in a location, there isn't an existing hotel at that location. So this is going to be potential development sites that you're evaluating. You can type that in for any location in the country. Susanville, California. I have no idea where that is. And now we have a custom location. We're default 5-minute, 15-minute drive time zone. Again, you could change that. And now you've got all the data, including the LARC score, the sub scores, everything is there, totally available to you. Again, you can save it into your comparison list. You can compare that property to hotels that have traded to get a sense of, well, what's the value really been worth, all those things. You can compare that to the competitors that you think will be in the area. How does this location stack up to those? All those types of things, super available to you, which gives you great insight into individual development sites. And again, and along those lines, as we focus on development sites, you can also run a query to say, I'm focused on finding areas that match specific criteria. So let's say, and this will take a second for it to populate, but let's say I'm really focused on areas that have a minimum RevPAR of $100, have RevPAR growth rate over 20% over the next 5 years. And if we go ahead and click that, and then we'll focus on the census block group level data, what you will see around Susanville is we're dashed out. The area that has the hotels doesn't match those criteria because, right, RevPAR is too low. But if I zoom out and go back to Las Vegas area, just to give you a sense, and we're going to get rid of all those hotels. And look, this is going to tell you across Las Vegas where we think that is most strong, which block groups and areas actually match your criteria. So down here, you've got one where you've got a $100.51 RevPAR. Oh, switch that to click. $100.51 RevPAR and strong growth. Up here, you've got a $107 RevPAR. It's not just the strip that makes sense. There's areas outside of Vegas that work really well, but it's not everywhere. There are other areas that you see challenges as well, and you want to avoid, and those are the areas that are dashed out, like you see there. You could even add another filter. Let's say we're focused on um, extended stay. So I still care about the RevPAR metrics, but I really also care about net migration trends. So let's take a look at net migration trends, and you can say what areas match all that criteria, but also have say 3% net migration growth. And if I click done, that's going to then repopulate, and again, it's going to identify all the areas that match that criteria. Some of them no longer work, others do. And as you go down, maybe we go into Phoenix, you'll see some areas that maybe fit the bill down there. I think I went over to California as opposed to Phoenix. There we go. And we'll go ahead and get rid of the hotels. And now you can see which areas around Phoenix fit the bill, match your criteria. So that it's limitless in terms of how many criteria you want to put in you want to put in to find your development sites, but you have the ability to find them all. The other thing that you can do here is you can find hotels that match specific criteria. And when you're doing that, basically, is you can find, hey, I'm looking at target acquisitions. So let's say you focus only on hotels that have a 75 or better. You want to look at hotels that have, you're focused on, for one reason or another, leisure score is really important to you. So you want that to be 75 or better. You really, really like room counts that are less than 200 keys. And you're also really focused on, we'll say, the Marriott International system. Okay. Find hotels that match that criteria. There are 528 of them. You can sort by descending. You can scroll through, or just like we did before, you can download all the data to these hotels. Super helpful. And now you have this filtered facilities report that gives you a sense of which hotels match the criteria. Super helpful. And one of the things that I imagine we're going to see when I'm going to look is there's also this one column in this data that is, quote, type. That's what you see here. Why is there a type that's relevant? Because not only do we have the transaction data, but oh, look, we have hotels under construction. And maybe you're looking at that as a potential takeout for you. And you're very interested in finding, logging into CoStar, finding that asset, finding out who the developer is, and making a phone call and saying, "Hey, I'd love to buy that asset. The hotel matches all our criteria. Would you be interested? You're going to have to refinance your construction loan. Interest rates are high. Let's put something together and make it work." So you have that ability. But again, all of the data for all of those hotels is all downloaded right there for you at the palm of your hands, making things very, very easy. There are a few more bells and whistles in the application, from the ability to save places, the ability to just simply drop a pin and pull data that way. We also have a help feature in the application that has all kinds of videos to help you basically identify with how to getting started and figuring out different use cases and how various other things may work. But at the end of the day, there's a lot in here, totally customizable. One of the things that I always say is, it's election time period, so maybe blues aren't your cup of tea. Guess what? You can change that. Change the areas from blues to reds. You can actually import a whole new color palette. You can pull down any of these different color palettes to align with your brands. You have the ability to do all of that nice and easy at the palm of your hands. And again, you can look at data down to the census block group level or expand it further out if you so chose. One thing I will say is the RevPAR data is only available at the block group level. That's where we've built it out, and that's where it operates. With that, thank you for joining. I hope you found this helpful. Please feel free to reach out to us. You can try us at information at larkanalytics.com, or me personally, ryan.melliker at larkanalytics.com. Happy to help you, better understand the application. We really think this application, which has gotten a ton of traction over the last 3 years, is going to be a game changer for the hotel industry, whether it be in the form of investors, in the form of operators, in the form of lenders, all leveraging new and different data to make better business decisions. And that's what we focus on at LARC. So if you're not familiar with us, certainly check us out. Feel free to reach out. Happy to walk you through a demo, give you some detail on what we have going on, and how we try to help our clients, which really run the gamut from major global institutional investors to the hotel REITs, to lenders, to third-party operators, to brokers, to developers, to small operators. Really runs the gamut, and we want to be happy to help you. With that, I'm going to stop. Thank you for your time and have a great day. And please reach out to us if we can be helpful.